welcome to another amazing episode of Say It Online, where we help digital agency owners stop just randomly shouting into the void and start communicating meaningfully and effectively in this digital age. I'm your host, Say Gabriel, and this episode was brought to you by our sponsor, Nancy Content. If you're sick of conversion content being a huge pain in your agency's butt, especially websites, campaigns, etc., let's talk. With the smoothest content process ever, a team of unbelievably skilled and organized content strategists, and years of subcontracting experience, Anansi is looking to make your life as a digital agency owner unbelievably easier. Just head, if you're interested, to anansicontent.com, that's ANANSI content.com, and hit Let's Talk. And now, without further ado, here's our episode. Hello, everybody. So I am really excited to be here today with Trina Fisher and Gretchen Cawthon of Left Right Labs. Gretchen and Trina are the founders of Left Right Labs, a branding agency that helps wellness influencers build bigger, better, and more beloved brands. With over 13 years of marketing experience and over 100 websites launched, they've supported celebrities, coaches, best-selling authors, thought leaders, and more in creating genuine brand identities online. Their clients have included industry leaders like Layla Ali, Optimum EFX, Ben Booker, Brianna Michelle, if I pronounced that right, and the New York Ad Council. On a more personal note, Gretchen and Trina, just to continue on our train of like awesome entrepreneurs that have really inspired me, are actually two people who I've been with for a lot of the last 2 years of our respective journeys. We have been in programs together and gone to conferences and worked together and all sorts of really cool stuff. And honestly, they are an incredible duo that bring just a really unique combination of skills and perspectives to the industry. And just really awesome to be able to bring some real talk to you listeners with you ladies today. So welcome, Trina and Gretchen.
Thank you so much.
We sound like fancy.
Right? What a great intro, Say. We're thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having us.
Yay. I am so stoked. And if there's one thing I've learned over the years of running a business, it's that in the end, you know, even like the really big people that I thought were like, holy cow, in the end are just people. And in the same way, just the kind of everyday agencies that I deal with, just like, wow, sometimes in terms of what you guys are doing and bringing to the table. So really awesome.
Thank you.
Anyway, so over the time we've known each other, both of our businesses have changed tremendously. What are some of the bigger changes in your business over the last few years?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, I think we've more than doubled our revenue, maybe even a couple of times in the last several years. We've gone from having a team to not having a team to back to having a team. Let's see. We've shifted tremendously in terms of the audience that we serve. That was probably the biggest shift for us. We realized that the skills that we possess and the type of work that we love to do was not a good fit for the current audience. So that was a major shift for us. And then that in turn has helped us to grow.
And I honestly think the biggest shift we've seen in our business is just our own confidence level in ourselves. And that's been really amazing.
That's so awesome. And that's so great to hear. And if there's anybody in the world who deserves a huge confidence boost, it's you guys. You do amazing work. So one of the things that you mentioned, I just want to zero in on a little bit because it's something that we end up talking about all the time, is how you have, I think you said like, hired a team, fired a team, hired a team again, or something like that. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. So what are some of the decisions that, led you to, through that journey, I guess, of hiring out people and then deciding it wasn't a good fit and then going down that journey again?
Well, the first factor is there's not enough of us to go around. It's always, oh crap, we have more work than we know what to do with. We need help. So that's real. That was obviously the first step in moving towards that. But it's been a little bit of a struggle for us to find the right people because of I don't want to sound braggy, but the level of work we do is pretty intense. And so we have to have people who are really honed in on the details. Mm-hmm. They have to be excellent at what they do, whether that's development or design. because the clients we serve expect excellence. They live excellence when they're, an Olympic athlete or professional athlete or doctor or we serve
TV
a lot of very high performing people who expect nothing but excellence. So we have to perform at that. So that's been a little bit of our challenge in finding the right people.
I think the first time we hired a team, we were serving a totally different audience. And unfortunately, that audience had the income for maybe an upfront engagement, but they didn't have income for ongoing marketing and work. And so that put us in a place where we were always scrambling to bring in new people, and we just couldn't sustain the cost of a team. So that was a real crush to our egos and just to the business and wanting to be able to serve our employees and our contractors. And so that definitely really shifted things for us. And then once we repositioned within our niche and really targeted that kind of top 7% of the health and wellness field, that's when we really started to see a change in our income and in our ability to really help their businesses grow. So that meant that we got to hire on more team members, more contractors. And so that's probably been the biggest catalyst to us being able to bring a team right back in.
I think that's really powerful. I think there's a lot of kind of push and pull and back and forth between whether you kind of hire up or hire down or this is my personal thing, hire up or down or laterally anyway. But this kind of chicken or egg thing, like everybody wants that great team. Like, do you hire for the great team and potentially not be able to sustain them? Or do you, potentially hire people to bolster you guys up, even if it's not in a place that ultimately you want to be spending your time in? So I'm curious, as you've, this time around, as you've repositioned yourself, what has been your overall approach to hiring? Is it really just having more resources equals more access to better people? Or has there been something else that you've kind of put, or other things you've put into place as well?
I think a big key component is that we learned that we don't have to hire someone full-time in order to be considered legit. And that was a really difficult, it was a really difficult mindset for us. So now we're really focused on right size hiring. So if that means that we're bringing in a project manager for 20 hours a week instead of 40 hours a week, or we're bringing on designers on a contract basis, but we're treating them really well, they're getting paid very, very fairly, and they know that when we get to do work with them, it's a really organized process. So we've learned that it doesn't have to be a full-time employee, that there are ways to distinguish yourself with your contractors to keep those relationships tight. And so that's currently where we're at. I think we'll probably get to a phase where we might end up with some full-time employees in the future, but that's not where we're at. And it's wonderful not to have any guilt around that anymore.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
I would say our business ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's really heavy on design. Sometimes it's really heavy on development. So it's not necessarily that we need a full-time development staff and a full-time design staff all the time. We need them when we need them. But then there's other times where it's swinging the other way, and I don't need as much development backup and vice versa. So I think that exactly what Trina said, the right size hiring and those people knowing exactly where we stand and why we need certain people at certain times. And we're not necessarily their only clients too. We share some of these resources with other people in our mastermind group or just other business owners in general. And that has helped them to also have these A player people on their teams without having to, again, hire full time and not being sure they can sustain those resources.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and potentially even ties into what you were talking about kind of the shame of not hiring full-time people, is getting over that and being like, oh, actually, we're also not going to be the only people potentially that someone works for. We can even share an amazing resource among people that you already love and trust who are doing something similar. And I know that we at Nancy, this was so critical for us, that exact situation you described, where capacity is a major, huge issue, but then potentially what you're needing from month to month differs. And then all of a sudden, this person that you were so needing for so many hours, all of a sudden you don't have work for them. So how do you balance that? I think is a really important question. And so what are some of the ways that you have, you mentioned hiring for the right fit of time. You used a really catchy phrase that I didn't write down.
Right-sizing your seat.
Right-sizing your seat. Oh, I love that.
I learned that from Brent Weaver, so that is not my phrase.
I think there's like a whole like generation of entrepreneurs that are going forth with Brent Weaverisms. I know the term gold nugget is one that we use consistently on this podcast. So with this right size hiring, if I got that right, what does that look like? Now, is it just as simple as kind of hiring contractors for variable amount of hours? Is it like, how do you structure this? What do your kind of agreements, that not necessarily your formal agreements, but what do your relationship agreements look like?
I think that it kind of depends on the role. So for us, for a project manager, that's something where we are saying, hey, you're going to be guaranteed X amount of hours per week or per month. And, we pay on those hours and we work out from there. And then if we end up needing to hire them for more hours, we say, hey, okay, can we bring you in for another 5 hours this month or whatever the situation may be. In terms of designers and developers, I think one of the big things that we have learned painfully over the last year is really making sure that they are 100% responsible for themselves. We have had several unfortunate situations where they're freelancers and we find them and they do good work and we're working together, and then they just expect us to always be bringing them work. And we're very clear up front of saying the reason we're hiring a contractor is because our workload is pretty hit or miss. So we have that conversation up front. But we've run into a few this last year that we've just had to make a decision. We are not working with them anymore, even though their work is excellent, because they are then trying to put that burden for hiring or for staying steady on us. On the flip side of that, when you can find somebody who really 100% owns that is their business, that is their freelance situation, it's really very similar to you running your own business. I don't run around expecting my clients to keep me busy. And so I really want to find someone that has that level of responsibility and understanding before I bring them on the team. And so we've seen some really staggering differences between different contractors. And that has definitely become a key for us to know we're never working with them again, or yes, let's throw everything we possibly can at them.
That's interesting how in being really pushy, they're actually pushing themselves away from the situation and dynamic where you give them what they want.
It's happened more than once, unfortunately.
All right. Well, I have a little. Oh, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to add. Also, one of the things that I've noticed in the last 2 or 3 years of having to hire developers is, we all know not every developer is the same. I've been developing for, I've had a computer since the 7th grade, and I'm turning 47 next month. So I've been doing this for a long, long time, and there's just a lot of skill sets within the development community. And so I've learned that it helps me to have 2 different types of developers on hand. It helps me to have people who follow instructions, and I can say, hey, here's our processes, here's what we do, go ahead and just follow this as best you can, and we'll review if you get stuck. Those are great team members to have. But then there's also those team members who do that well are not also the same team members who troubleshoot very well. And we need both in that element. And I love people who follow my instructions and get the job done exactly how we specify. But I also need people on those one-off situations to where I'm traveling and I can't troubleshoot, or I'm super busy and I just don't have time for that particular problem, and it requires custom code and this and that. So I found that I have to kind of build up my bench a little bit based on what I feel that person's best use of their time is. If I know they're really good at troubleshooting and they'll get it done quickly, and they'll come back to me when they get stuck without spending a lot of time and resources, specifically money, to throw at that problem, then I'll put them on my troubleshooting bench. If I see that they're not so great at troubleshooting, or they take too much time, or they're always coming back to me, relying on me to give them the answer or the next step, then I put them on my regular development bench, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to hand you things that have a very clear, defined set of steps and an outcome, and let them do that. So there's kind of 2 camps when it comes to development, and Trina can probably speak the same in design. There's different designers and different skill sets there.
Yes, I would definitely say that same follows for design. There are some designers that are used to having to really hop in and, come up with the concepts and really think through the strategy. And then there are some designers who are used to being part of a big corporate company. And so they weren't the ones that had to think strategically about what the visuals are that should match. And so I, as the person hiring them, really have to think through what is their background and how can I help them really do the best job possible based on their skill sets.
I think this is really, really powerful that you brought this up, because what I'm hearing is that even within a particular, type of work that's being done, there can be different roles.
Yes.
And, the framework that I kind of mentioned before in terms of delegating up laterally or down, that's exactly kind of what I use it to refer to, which is where, on one case, you're delegating down to someone who can do the work, but ultimately the kind of responsibility for making sure it's what you need it to be is going to still remain with you, versus delegating laterally to someone who can do what you do.
Yeah.
As opposed, and delegating up would be, for example, like working with a white labeler or something who does something that you guys don't necessarily do, where you're hiring someone that's actually more skilled than you at something. So I think this is a really, really important concept, because I think a lot of people, at least a lot of people that I've spoken to, are really struggling with that question of, who do you hire first? How do you structure your company? How do you structure the different elements of it? And, I'm going to put you on the spot here because I'm curious how you guys approached it. It sounds like you have multiple different benches and you kind of know where and when to apply people from those different benches. But how did you decide which role to hire first?
Oh, gosh. I think we approached it by who was wearing the most hats at the time and needed to get something off their plate, which almost always rolls back to me because I handle the finances, I handle the project management, the development. Basically, I was handling everything except design in the very beginning.
And sales.
Well, sales was kind of split between us.
Mm-hmm.
We've branched off since then to where Trina handles almost all of the incoming new sales, new clients. And then I kind of, depending on what the client is coming back to us for, I handle most of the recurring sale types of things. But it was really a matter of Gretchen's overloaded, spending every weekend and every evening working. So let's try to find somebody to fill in that development piece.
Absolutely. And because our projects really fall into 3 phases, there's strategy, there's design, and there's development. When we looked at the percentages of which position took the most time, well, strategy is both of us up front. And then about 1/3 of a project is the design and branding. And the other 2/3 are really the development and the build out. So when we started to look at that, we're like, okay, well, we obviously need to get more developers on the team to take this pressure off of Gretchen, in addition to wearing all the other hats that she was wearing.
So this is super appropriate to kind of the right-left brain analogy in you guys' name, where it's like on one hand, you did a bit of a gut check and it's like, I'm way overwhelmed doing too much of this thing. I need to not do so much of this thing anymore. But on the other hand, you sat down and looked at the data and observed, okay, it's always going to be like this.
Yes,
if we don't change something, because so much of the work is weighted to that part of it. Awesome. So as you guys started to then, grow and trial and error and all of that fun stuff, I think a lot of people who are listening to our podcast, they've made that first hire, maybe they have a small team. And often the question that comes into play is more along the lines of, what role ultimately are you guys trying to occupy? Like, where is it that you kind of sit in the business now? And is that where you would respectively like to be sitting in the long term?
So yesterday we had a client who came to us and one of the things he said, which is not the first time we've heard this, is I'm looking for a one-stop shop. And I've heard this over and over again. And yesterday it kind of dawned on me. It's like almost every one of our clients, that's what they want, is a one-stop shop. But if you're a one-stop shop, then you're just kind of good at a lot of things, or really good at a lot of things, but you're not excellent at specific things. And so I'm like, what we really want to be excellent at, and what we are excellent at, is that brand strategy. And it doesn't mean we're not good at the development or not good at the design, because we're excellent at that too. But we're not things like social media and SEO and all of that, I know a lot about those things. I can do those fairly well, but I don't spend a lot of time and resources in them because my skill set and the things I love to do are in the brand strategy and the development areas. So when it comes to being a client's one-stop shop, what we really want to be in that realm and what we're striving for is the strategy role. We want to be their main brand strategist and help them with the overall picture, help them choose the additional team members they need for the SEO or for the Facebook or whatever it is that they need that we're not the best fit for, because we are generalists in those areas. We're not specialists in those areas. And again, going back to the level of client that we have, they demand excellence. So they need to have people who are the top of the top in those specific areas to work with them. So we see ourselves as kind of like their teammates, and we're helping them to coordinate and find those right other teammates. But then we want our clients to come back to us as the one-stop shop when it comes to the strategy and help them create their overall brand picture.
Wow, that's awesome. I can tell you've been putting a lot of thought into this, which I think is really cool. Let me see if I'm understanding. So what you're finding, if I'm going to kind of put it into my own words here a little bit, is that as you guys, zeroed in on the particular people that you like to work with and zeroed in on their problems, you realized that there was a little bit of a disconnect of what they needed and what you wanted to represent, in the sense that they were looking for one point of contact that they could focus on, but also excellence at all levels, which is something that you guys just can't provide with just two people in-house. Right. But there are things that you guys are really excellent at, and that is, the basis of your relationship anyway, which is brand strategy. Mm-hmm. And so using that expertise and the expertise that you have with the other parts of the web, you can leverage that. If I'm hearing correctly, that's enough to be really, really excellent at the part that you do, and then excellent at helping them screen and understand which other people can support those needs, because you understand the needs, you understand the industry, and you have specific connections as well that maybe you have screened that you can leverage. Is that
absolutely.
Okay, awesome. So in the end, right now, I'm hearing right now and in the future, your title then becomes like brand strategist, is that?
Yes, mm-hmm. That's what is on both of our business cards. And I think another way to really evaluate this for yourself is to stop and think about what roles in your business really light you up. Like what is the role that you could fill where if something was happening in the background and caught on fire, you wouldn't even notice because you're just 100% in the zone with what you're doing. And so when we step back, and in our true form of left, right labs, left brain and right brain, when we step back and considered, okay, from a logistics pattern, this is who we need to hire. And also just from personally what we love to do, this makes the most sense for us on that kind of care/emotional level. So, really stopping and thinking about what lights you up is a great way for you to identify, okay, I need to hire someone else here because they're going to be faster. They're going to be more affordable. They're going to be serving our clients better. And at the end of the day, that's really the goal. If you're sitting in a seat that you hate and you're keeping it because you're too stubborn to let it go, then you're actually doing a disservice to your client. And so that's something to really pause and dig deep on to make sure that that's not the situation you've put yourself in.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And, one of those things that sounds simple, but usually isn't very easy is figuring out, like what lights you up, I just love the way you put it. Like if everything literally caught on fire, or if there's fires going on around you, what would you just continue to be focused on?
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of other agency leaders that I've spoken to, report back that it can be very, very challenging. Also, I don't need anyone to report back. I've experienced this, that it can be so challenging to kind of put that trust, even if you're overworking yourself or even if you're sitting in a seat maybe that you don't like, it can be really difficult to kind of give that trust to someone else to execute that, especially a contractor, and especially if it's something that's kind of a critical service, even if it's not that thing that lights you up. I'm wondering, has that been an issue for you guys? Or was it kind of a relief to be able to find other people to take on important stuff?
Both. I think that up front, if I am being like brutally honest with myself, a lot of it is stupid ego. Like you just gotta let go of that. There are people that are absolutely better than you, more equipped, are willing to learn your process. And I think the thing is, we expect people to be in our brains immediately, and that's just not real. So you have to give it some time. There are circumstances where, okay, this person is not cut out to be that go-to for you. But a lot of it is really just us getting in our own way. And so when you can pause and really write down, like, what are the things that I am, best and highest equipped for? What is my zone of genius? Like, if I can really focus on those things, then I can see that I have to let this go to someone else. It's freaking messy, because you got to figure out how to communicate what's been in your head. For Gretchen and I, we've been working together for over 13 years now. So if I'm doing design on something, like, I don't even have to tell her what I want. We know each other's quirks so much now. I can like lift my eyebrow and she knows what that means. But I cannot expect that same level of understanding from a new designer or a new developer if I'm not willing to put in the time and energy to foster that. So I think that that's really part of it, is just getting out of your own way, realizing that, if we are equipping them to do a better job than we are, then we can focus on that stuff that we're really best made for.
And what are some of those things that you have done successfully to properly equip someone to read your brain, so to speak, or to be able to, at the very least, do super good work for you guys?
Process. That's the biggest thing. And even with that, I've learned that, so I had a lot of processes already in place for me personally, because I was trying to build up to get to a team member. And then we had this interesting, a time where we hired a team, like a pod of people. And so I had to retool my processes a little bit to hand off to that group of people so that they could understand a little bit more about what we're doing. And then we switched over to hiring one of the people out of the pod to be basically a full-time developer for us. I was a contractor basis, but pretty much 40 hours of work. And I realized that all those processes that I retooled now had to be retooled back because it just didn't fit that situation. And I've also learned that I love writing things down and creating outlines and spreadsheets and all that stuff, but not everybody gets that and in their way of communication. And Trina and I have said this on previous conversations about, there are people who, when it comes to video on our clients' websites, Trina likes to watch the videos. She'll watch the video. I'm like, for everybody who puts a video up there, please put a transcript, because there are people like me that I do not want to watch the video.
Oh, I'm so with you. Oh gosh.
Read it faster than you can say it. And sometimes there's not, a fast forward to 2x and speed them up. So I'm like, I want to read it. And I found that when you're giving out those process instructions, you've got to find out from the person that's on your team, what's their preference? Are they more visually driven? Are they more
Absolutely.
audio? We had a developer who you could write things down a million times, but he had to hear it in order for him to process and understand exactly what the next step was. And we have team members who are visual learners, so I'll make them a Loom video. And so I'm finding that when it comes to documentation, I almost have to do it two ways, or at least do it once and have someone else transcribe it or something, because everybody learns differently. And that's a big key to helping them to get inside your brain.
And I'm not somebody who is naturally process driven. Gretchen, you're totally allowed to laugh. I am not somebody who creates processes easily. So it really makes me have to stop and think about it. So what I've been doing with a current designer that I'm really loving is really just asking her, like, I'm coming to the table with assumptions of how I like to receive information, of how I process information. And then I'm feeling frustrated when she comes back with something different. So I just really have to pause and say, okay, what made you think of this? What was your thought process behind that? Like taking the time to hear her thoughts behind it or his thoughts behind it, without, putting pressure on it. And also asking them, what way do you prefer to receive information? So Loom videos have been amazing. Finding frameworks that help you identify what the final outcome is. That's a big one too. Like if my final outcome is I need this brand to represent XYZ, I don't have to care about how the designer got there. Just because they didn't do it the exact same way I do, doesn't matter if the final outcome is correct. And then I know what my absolute boundaries are. Like, okay, this does have to be built this way because I'm going to have other team members getting in there. So I think if you can identify those core outcomes up front, that really helps you to be lenient when it counts and really just communicate with them about how they want to receive information.
Okay, so I want to clarify here. And by the way, I think this is brilliant. I'm like taking notes. I'm like, wow, I definitely want to implement some of this. But when you talk about frameworks to identify the final outcome, now, do you mean, like a structured way to measure whether the outcome is, like aligned with what you want it to be?
I think that depends for the situation. But for me, if with design, everything's a little less tangible, right? So I have to identify for myself what are the things that are measurable in there. Like this has to be to these exact specs and, you can't waver on pixels and points, right? Those are real tangible, measurable things. But then if I'm also looking at identifying what is the overall core feeling that this client wants to have their end client's experience when they encounter their brand, I have to do a good job at documenting that. And that means that I have to give my designers access to our strategy files. Maybe I need to be including them on calls that I hadn't been including them in before. Maybe I need to be sitting down and creating a Loom video or doing a one-on-one call with them. So, really just kind of sitting down and brain dumping first what I want to get out of the situation and what my client and their end client needs helps me to step back and go, okay, these little pieces in between don't matter as much if this designer doesn't follow those exact steps. Does that make more sense?
I think it does. And just to kind of recap the things that I'm hearing here. So going all the way back to what Gretchen was saying and what you were saying as well, asking the person that you're trying to train what format of process works best for them and understanding that you may need to record something in more than one format. I think that is just in itself really gold. And then the other thing that I'm hearing, and I love this because this is totally from, I'm on the more process driven, write it all down side, but I work with and hear from a lot of people who are not. And I like your idea of working backwards from the outcome. So asking yourself, okay, this final product, maybe there are some measurable things it needs to adhere to, but what are the things that will make it, what are the qualities that will make it successful? In the case of design, what emotions do you want it to evoke, for example? What are the things that will tell us that this is hitting it out of the park? And then I'm hearing that also potentially lets you release a little bit of that over attachment sometimes to this, specifically how it was done or specifically what it looks like if it is achieving what you want it to achieve.
Yeah. And to me, thinking that I would do it better, which honestly is not the case. Like if you're hiring properly, you're hiring somebody who does your work better than you. And so, it takes a little trial and error to get there, but I'm thrilled to say I'm finally there. And, it's still a process, even with this current designer, of me understanding how she wants to communicate and me being willing to hear that the way I communicated up front wasn't what she needed. Initially when this process started, I was getting frustrated. Like, why on earth do I have to tell her what kind of illustrations to create for this project? And then I realized, oh, wait a minute. This designer came from Nike. They came from corporate. They were used to being in charge of a very small amount of what they had to do. Now, my background, I came from a super small agency. There were literally 4 of us there. So I had to wear all the hats in terms of strategy, in terms of design, whereas the designer I'm working with now didn't. So I just have to keep reminding myself that she's going to pick up on things that I'm saying over and over again as we get further. And every time we work on a project together, I get to refine the process and have better documentation for whatever other designers I'm working with on future projects.
Absolutely. And one of the other things I'm taking out of this now is that it's really important to be willing to adapt the process to the right person is what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing.
Yeah.
Is that, like different projects or, different approaches might require different things out of you and them, and being willing to kind of put your ego aside a little bit in terms of expecting them to magically be able to read your brain.
Right.
understand. It sounds like you've done a lot of work, both on yourself and on how you look at and approach the structure of a project and processes, so that you're not compromising at all on the final quality, but you're, being a lot more fluid about the process to get there, and making sure that you're talking about it as early on in the process as possible, is what I'm hearing, if you're potentially including them in like strategy sessions or so.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
I would also add that part of that framework process, so many people, when you say the word process, they think step-by-step instructions. That's what you're giving somebody, step-by-step instructions. But we are in a creative work. And so we step-by-step process means you'd be churning out the exact same thing every single time. And that's not what we do. So much of what we do is just highly creative. We try, we're building brands. Brands can't look like other brands. They have to be unique and different. So when it comes to frameworks, what I think makes us successful or stand out a little bit more is as Trina said earlier, it's all about the outcome. It's not necessarily that they took the same road to get there that she would take. It's that they came to the same outcome that we were trying to achieve for the client, and we made the client happy. And we do that through, instead of just having processes that are like, click here, do this, do that. It's all about checklists and did they check all the boxes? Did our developer install this? Did they set up this? Does the page do this? Is it mobile responsive? Is it this? Is it? It's all about checklists to make sure every component of that build fits our standards, fits the standards of the website or what the client's expectations were, et cetera. And then same thing on Trina's side. There are some checks and balances around that design that we use. And so the creative outcome is always different. So we always get a different result visually or functionally, but the process itself is always the same with those checklists of, hey, did we do this? Did we do that? Does it meet this standard?
Awesome. Create consistency with checklists. I like that. Or no, create consistency in creative with checklists. Yeah. So in endeavors where, you know that each time it is going to be totally different because you're in a creative field where that's part of it, create yourself, some structure around making sure that all the boxes are literally checked at the end to make sure that you have something that's going to accomplish what you want it to, which is, partially satisfy the client, but partially, in the case of a brand, I'm sure it has a lot to do with being unique and memorable, but helping to carry out the client's vision and goals.
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. So as long as we're on the topic of structure, what sort of shifts have you kind of made or what other sort of shifts, have you made, if any, in your systems and infrastructure and et cetera, to accommodate more people, more contractors, more work?
This one I really like. We just implemented this in the last few months, but again, going back to those roles and who's wearing what hat. We had to reorganize our file system recently so that people could find things, because we realized as our team grew, well, we kind of knew where stuff was, but they really struggled with, is that in this folder or that folder? Is that on Google Drive? Is that in Dropbox? Where do I find this or that? So what I came up with this idea of, hey, think of it as, what role are you in at the time that you're looking for that file? Are you wearing your sales hat? Are you wearing your marketing hat? Are you wearing your developer hat? What are you doing? And so we've divided all of our file systems into basically Google Drives. Each team drive is associated with a hat or a role, so to speak. So we have a developer drive. Anybody who is working with development within inside Left Right Labs has access to that drive that has everything you need to know to be a good developer on our team. We have a brand strategist drive, and that has everything that goes into the brand strategy pieces we do, all the resources, the tools, the documents, the templates, etc., everything in there. Same thing for sales marketing. We even have an owner's one. So when I'm wearing, like what I was doing this earlier today, I was getting ready for taxes. So I go into owners, taxes, and there's everything. I'm wearing my owner's hat, doing my taxes. So we structured things around those roles so it becomes intuitive to know where to find things. If I'm going on a trip and I need to look up my travel information, that's the administrative assistant's job to set up our travel and do those types of things. So I go to the administrative assistant's bucket and look in my travel folder, and there's my information. So it just made the whole thing intuitive for us.
And so what I'm hearing is that if you have someone who maybe wears more than one hat, this system allows you to kind of accommodate that while forcing people, including yourselves, to think about, okay, what am I doing right now? What kind of bucket does this fall into? And I like that term. That's something that we use internally as well. And as usual, I'm just hearing that simple. As your team complexified, your file system had to simplify. And
That's right.
That is really cool. Yes. And Trina, I'm curious, did you have any insight in terms of different approaches or things that have kind of shifted as your team has continued to grow?
Absolutely. One of the things that we've noticed happen over the last several years is when we started this business, we weren't thinking of making this like a full-blown business. This was like a side hustle for each of us. And so we had files that were in personal drives and work drives. Like as Gretchen mentioned, it had been so cluttered, we had to bring them all together, but not just the file systems, but really stopping and thinking about, okay, if we wanted to actually sell this business, what would have to be done to make that happen? We have no idea if we're going to sell this business someday, but that gave me a framework to really understand and help us to kind of take some of the personal attachment that we had to certain things out of the picture. So that helped us to really go, okay, if somebody was going to walk in here and buy the business, they have to know where things are, how to get them, what the processes are. So that means we have to be building out all those systems. And that's also helped us, I think, really step into some of the confidence that we've gained over the last year and even taking an even higher level of ownership over our company than we've had before, just because it's like, oh, shoot, someone might be looking over our shoulder at some point. Like the teacher's going to check our work. We should probably make sure it's done in a right and proper order. And so it's really helped us be even more detailed than we were in the beginning and helped us to really think about the best ways to simplify something for a total stranger to come in and be able to pick up where we left off someday.
I love that because what I'm hearing from you is really not that we all need to embrace the whole idea that one day we're going to sell our businesses for millions of dollars or et cetera, but simply the practice of imagining, okay, what if we were going to sell this business right now? What would someone who is a total stranger potentially looking to buy this business need to make it run effectively and at the level that you're used to and that you want it to? And I really like that and using that as a challenge to simplify specifically.
Yeah, there's this great book called Built to Sell, and it's by John Warrillow, Warrillow, friends. And this book is phenomenal. It makes such a simple process about how to do this in your own business. It really tells through story ways to think through how this could impact your own. And that has gone such a long way over the last, I would say, probably 2 years for us of really helping us think about ways that we should restructure for ourselves, which in the end has made it so much simpler for our team.
That's wonderful. And to all of our listeners, as usual, we will be including that in the show notes. Awesome. And as we transition into our lightning round here, I'm curious for listeners who, have teams, trying to grow the teams, trying to train the teams, trying to keep on top of the teams without going insane. Do you have any final pieces of advice or insight that either one of you would like to share?
Just take it a day at a time. I mean, it's going to change, and there's literally nothing wrong with that. So what Gretchen and I are going into business with today, the mindset that we have today, it is going to change in 6 months, and it should. And really just kind of embracing that, and instead of beating yourself up about things not going exactly the way you expected, just recognize that that means you are educating yourself. You're really growing and you're gaining more wisdom. And I think if we can kind of step back and look at it from that perspective instead of the I must control it all, right? It all kind of comes back to ego. Like if you can step back and just go, hey, wait, this means I'm progressing as a business owner, as an employer, then it really helps make growth much more possible and much less stressful. If you just know it's going to change, and that's totally as it should be.
I would say my piece of advice is fix it as soon as possible, or fix it. Mine is always fix it in the moment, but I know sometimes in the moment, time's a factor, and you just, it's going to take you an hour to fix that thing and you don't have the hour, then obviously you have to reschedule. But if we can, I know I annoy my team all the time by saying, stop, let's fix this now. Let's not just try to brush it over. I'm like, you can't find that file. Why can't you find that file? Do we need to rename it? Do we need to move it to a different folder? What's the problem? Or, why are we revisiting the same problem that we fixed last month? Did we not solve it last time, or did something change with, the software or whatever? So I'm really big about whenever there is a frustration or a problem in the business, let's solve it now and make sure that we're not having to deal with the same problem over and over again.
I get annoyed in the moment, but she's always right.
That's probably why you get annoyed in the moment.
Like, dang it. Okay, fine. We'll pause. But it literally always pays off.
Yeah. At Nancy, we have a similar practice. We call it fail fast, where we're like, it's okay if it's a problem or if you're going to fail, because as you guys said, that's an opportunity to improve and learn and grow. But also it has to be fast, because otherwise you might never fix that thing. Then you'll end up potentially riding a dying horse into the ground. And,
yes.
Or even, just letting small problems get really big unintentionally or take a long time, I think solving things quickly or on the spot is important as well if it can keep things moving along quicker, which I think is one of the more underappreciated aspects of running a business, is understanding the relative speed of things.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Are you guys ready for a few rapid fire last questions?
All right, bring it on. Bring it on.
All right. So first question, what is it that gets you up in the morning?
Mine's easy. It's a little dog named Nugget that lives a block away. It sounds a little strange, but if you ever have issues with getting up in the morning or getting up on time, get a pet or a dog or something that will let you know it's time to get up. Because the funny thing is we babysit this neighbor dog. And so my neighbor texts me every day to let me know she's bringing the dog over. I literally have to get up out of bed and go to the door to let the dog in. So I'm up. That's what gets me up in the morning, is that little dog.
Oh my gosh. I think the deeper question that you're really asking, say, is why do we do what we do? And, we work with celebrity wellness experts, and we have both experienced some really difficult times in the health of family members and loved ones. And so for us, the reason we're in this niche, the reason we are doing the work we're doing, is to really help elevate the platform that they have and help them communicate clearly about how to take ownership over your health, how to take responsibility for yourself, how to empower your families to live healthier lives, so that at the end of the day, they aren't going through what our families went through and through what we personally have experienced in those situations. So that is definitely the heartbeat of Left Right Labs, and why we do branding for celebrity wellness experts, is to just help elevate them higher and help them reach more people.
Yeah, I'd also like to add that this is something we didn't really get to in this interview, but something that I've always really respected you guys for is that you're very, very careful about picking the people that you help and represent, because with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah. And I've noticed you guys tend to work with people who are really, really doing amazing work and helping a lot of people, and who share your values and stuff. So I think that's really powerful that you're practicing what you preach.
Thank you. That's really close to our hearts. And, we want to work with people that are down to earth and really in it for the right reasons and really genuinely here to help. And that's kind of our screening. And if you don't tick those boxes, then I'm sorry, we're not the right team for you. And we're so thankful to be in a position in our business where we can follow through on that.
Yeah. Saying no is powerful, but scary, especially when you need money. All right. So what is the number one thing that each of you does to preserve your wellness?
Sleep. I am very, very particular about how much sleep I get at night. Like, I know my number, it's 7.5 hours. And if I get less than that, I'll be a zombie the next day. So I would definitely say sleep, but I also combine that with Taekwondo. I do Taekwondo 3 times a week. And so that's like obviously my exercise, but it's also just, it's good with mindset and focus. because all day long I sit at my desk and I give the orders, and I have to be the disciplined one, and I have to be the one that makes those decisions and motivates myself and everything else. But when I go to Taekwondo, I have to stand there and listen and take orders from someone else. So I really like that. Basically, I've outsourced my fitness to my
keeps you humble too.
Totally.
That's
For
awesome.
me, hands down, it's trees. I have got to get myself around some trees, go for a hike, smell the dirt. Like if I don't do that, I will go crazy. So that's something that, I have some friends here that like we'll schedule a hike, once every other week. And then I'm going and, taking my dog for a run or a walk in between, or, whatever else it is. For me, connecting with nature is a major, major way to help me reset and to help boost my creativity. And man, I just got to have me some trees.
I relate to both of those things very strongly. And I think it's really cool, Gretchen, that you bring sleep up, because I think that, and I do think this perception is changing in the entrepreneurial world, that, you can sleep when you're dead or whatever, that we just need to push through and put in maximum hours in the day. And I definitely just turned it into, if I'm being candid, I did not get enough sleep last night after getting perfect sleep, and I'm just like, oh gosh, just blary-eyed and struggling. But also I super relate to you, Trina. For me, it's big nature, like big ocean, big trees. That's all, ways of keeping yourselves grounded. And I think that's really cool. And if I had someone who could, tell me what to do to exercise, I'd be
Totally.
The best I have is my partner bugs me to go for walks. Anyway, it's supposed to be rapid fire. Moving on. So last question. What is the weirdest habit you have that contributes to your success?
Gretchen, you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
My weird habit is Lego, and if I want to really absorb something and understand it, for example, I'm listening to a really good audiobook or a podcast, or even just watching trainings online. Trina can tell you, I do this all the time. We'll pay for some expensive training that we have to grow our business. And it'll be hours and hours and hours of video, and we'll get on Zoom and we'll start watching that video. I will pull out my Lego and I will either sit there and sort it, or I will build something, or I will do, and it looks like I'm totally not paying attention, but I'm soaking in every little bit of that. And then later on, when I go back and I look at the thing that I built, which, you guys can't see me, but behind me, there are tons and tons of Lego buildings and creations and all kinds of stuff. But I can look at those and I can recall what I listened to in that moment of, oh, I was listening to so-and-so's podcast, or, oh, we were watching this mastermind training, or this or that. And so it helps me to really retain by sitting there and building. And I'm actually solving more complex problems when I'm building than I am in my business. But that's my weird thing, I guess.
My weird quirk that really helps me be successful in the business is before every sales call, I literally tell myself, I do not need this sale. And if I show up putting that pressure on the call, then I'm not actually listening to that potential client. I'm not really hearing the problems that they're bringing to the table. What I'm doing is my mind is trying to fish around and find ways to steer it back to me, which isn't serving anybody. And so I literally pause and I tell myself, like, I do not need this sale, even when we're desperate for money. And that is really scary. But like, I do not need this sale. I'm here to serve them. And at the end of the day, if we're the right fit, then we're the right fit and it'll take care of itself. And so I have been really pleasantly surprised at how much easier sales have become since I started implementing that as part of my process before a call.
That's great. That's something I have not heard before, but I instantly feel an attraction to is telling yourself, I don't need this sale. I don't need this sale, so that you can be more present and listen and absorb and engage and see genuinely whether someone is a right fit, rather than seeing it through, the green tinted lenses of, oh gosh, I could really use your money.
Yes. Yeah. Because when it comes down to it, sure, we could help anybody who's coming through our door, but if that's not really the best use of our time and our skill to help them, then we're literally stealing their money. And so when I help put it in that framework for myself, it helps me just to show up and to be present. And I started implementing that about 2.5 years ago. And I think it really genuinely has changed the way our conversations go. And I repeatedly hear from clients, gosh, I love that I never feel like you're selling to me. Like you're talking to me, you're having a conversation, it's friendly, I don't feel the pressure. And for us, that works really well. For me, that works well.
Excellent. Excellent. And if our listeners would love to find out more about you or connect with you guys or something like that, where would they be able to find you online?
leftrightlabs.com.
Awesome. And as always, we will have a link to that in the show notes and on our website at anancycontent.com. Awesome. Well, this has been such a pleasure, ladies. If I'm being candid, I had like a bunch of questions that I didn't even touch on because we just had so much gold. We didn't even need to go there. But who knows? Maybe I can convince you to come back sometime.
Absolutely. I think we can do that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your insight, your experiences, some of the challenges that you had. I think that what you guys are going through in terms of your growth and, redefining yourselves with the team and contractors and stuff is just something that a lot of people can relate to because it never ends in some ways or it doesn't end for a while. Honestly, you guys just gave so much actionable, practical insight and advice, which I just love. And I'm going to go and download to my team.
Well, thank you so much, Say. This was an amazing experience. And for those of you who are listening and not working with Anancy Content yet, you really should. Like, they have made our process so much more simple. We really trust their team, and they always take amazing care of our clients. I'm not being paid to say this. You just need to know that you are in incredibly good hands if you're working with Anancy Content. So they're highly recommended by Left Right Labs.
Aw, thank you. Aw, that
Absolutely.
means a lot to me. That means a lot to me to hear. Thank you. I mean, it's a great endorsement. Yes, people, talk to us. We will help you. If you're a good fit, we're actually also not afraid to say no. But honestly, even just on a personal level, you guys do amazing work with amazing people who are also doing amazing work. And it's really a treat to be able to facilitate that. So thanks to you guys, and thanks to all of our listeners. As always, have a great day. And that does it for another amazing episode of the Say It Online podcast. Join us next week. And don't forget to like and subscribe, whether it's iTunes, whatever your favorite podcast player is. It is always, always appreciated. It really makes a difference for us. It helps us get this word out to more people. As always, this episode was brought to you by our sponsor and Say's own business, Anancy Content. If you're a digital agency owner and you're still wasting too much time chasing down content that maybe isn't even all that great, let's talk. We've spent years working on the best process for selling, planning, and delivering amazing conversion content for your client projects. Better yet, we moosh our process to yours so that your client and you have a seamless and amazing experience the entire time through. If you're interested, just go to our website. That's www.anancycontent.com. That's ANANSI content.com. And just click Let's Talk. I'd love to chat with you. Someone else on the team would also love to chat with you too. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day.